Throughout the week, people have asked me, man of interest, what do you think of the KBD75? And until this review, I have, for the most part, answered everyone the same. So far, so good. And I can tell you now, it is so far so good. My initial impressions upon receiving this keyboard in the mail is that it's nice and hefty. It's a solid heft that inspires confidence in a keyboard. It's like the opposite of the first time you pick up an HHKB. The first time you pick up an HHKB, a keyboard you just spent $200 on, you're probably going to feel underwhelmed by how light it feels. The KBD75 is the opposite upon picking it up. It has heft, and while in competitions of heavier keyboards, there are sure contenders that would knock this keyboard out. But it feels perfectly hefty for its size, and inspires ideas of quality. At least the weight does anyhow. Let's go over the physical overview. I like to start off with the biggest flaw that this case has to offer, which is the exposed and visible anodization points on the sides of the keyboard. This is some poor decision making on the part of the factory to anodize the case somewhere outwardly visible. I was told though by the group by runner Madagascar that this defect is only to be found in this sample unit. He told me that after the most recent Talk Clack episode, that all the group by cases will not have the anodization points on the outside where they are visible, so that's a good sign. The acrylic middle layer is quite small. It's quite inefficient at diffusing the RGB LEDs on the PCB, and to be fair, the dark gray anodization probably doesn't help either. The RGB LED you see here is at its max brightness, and that's kind of pathetic. Not really that visible unless you're in a dark setting, and I'd say it looks as good or even better with the RGB LEDs turned off. Continuing on this physical overview, the edges and corners are done pretty nicely. Nothing is sharp enough to stab, and the USB port is nicely tucked away with ample space. The plate is held on to the bottom of the case with a lot of screws that really help give a solid feeling when typing on the keyboard. With this many standoffs at so many different points, there are less places where the plate has a chance of sagging while stressfully typing. The anodization feels smooth and looks pretty good, and I have no real complaints about the rest of the quality of the case. The acrylic layer, while flimsy to handle, works well with the case. There are no indentations on the bottom of the case for feet, nor were there any feet included for me. I just stuck my own rubber feet on the bottom, but having recessed spaces for feet would have been preferred like found on many other keyboards. For switches, this keyboard is rocking MX Clears, and it's been a while since I've used stock MX Clears. And to be honest, this keyboard is a great way to use MX Clear stock for the first time in quite a while. I'm actually really enjoying these stock clears when I'd normally opt to use Ergo clears or Zelios, and I might end up replacing these switches with Zelios or mod switches in the future. But for now, I feel quite content leaving them as is on this build. Programmability. This keyboard is fully programmable with WinKeyless's Boot Mapper client. It makes it nice and easy to change around what you want, where you want on the keyboard. For those who aren't familiar with WinKeyless's Boot Mapper client, it organizes all of the keys into rows and columns for you to change. It supports multiple layers, macros, and allows you to change the underglow RGB settings. It's pretty easy to program, and it's pretty easy to work with once you get the hang of the rows and columns and where they correlate on your keyboard. On top, I have JTK white on black, and this set looks quite well with this keyboard. Aside from some minor inconsistencies with the legends, I'm pleased about how this looks as a whole package. Something I noticed when putting on and removing them though is that the keys that sit on the top row are very close to the top edge, making it difficult to get a wire of a keycap puller around opposite corners of the keycaps. Be careful not to scratch that side of the case when removing keycaps. The layout supports a plethora of options, but oddly enough, not all of the options. While it does support a split backspace and a variety of bottom row options, there isn't any support for a stepped caps lock, which I found to be quite odd. The 75% layout is quite efficient for those who need more than a 65% can offer. The inclusion of the top row above lends to be more keys to play with without needing to go into a function layer. Personally, I'm quite a fan of the 75% layout, and I think it works quite well on this keyboard. So how does she type? Quite spectacularly. The keyboard feels nice and solid as I type. The solid feeling does definitely make this keyboard feel more premium than it costs, which is always a great sign. The keyboard's angle isn't so aggressive that I can't use this keyboard without a wrist rest, although personally I would always be using a wrist rest when I can. Finally, the big discussion for most people would be the quality versus the price. As a note, while I was asked by Madagascar to review this keyboard, I did pay for this keyboard out of my own wallet. Its quality to price is on point. This keyboard costs half of what I paid for my GON MX Mini, and is equal if not higher in quality. And unlike my GON MX Mini, I love that this case has a high profile instead of the floating keys aesthetic, which you all know I'm not a fan of. This keyboard is great for its price. It's nice and it's hefty. It has a solid typing experience and it seems pretty well built. Overall, if you're on the fence about this keyboard for whatever reason, but it does interest you, I'd have to say it's a good deal to consider. Check it out before it ends. The link is in the description. Everyone, thank you so much for watching.